Hey guys, so I am finally back from New York City. I am sitting here in my regular filming room. I am so happy to be home. I love New York and I love visiting, and I had such a great trip. I had so much fun. I'm gonna do like a haul video a little bit later on, and I'll talk a little bit more about my trip and what I did, but it's so good to be home. I mean, it's always so good to get home. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to get this video up quickly is because there is a Sephora summer sale coming up tomorrow. What I'm doing is basically updating my spring 2019 recommendations video because I feel like I just did that. So what I did in that video was I basically went by brand, and I thought that that would be like a different way of doing it. And I needed a way for myself personally to kind of like organize all the information. And I think you guys really enjoyed that. So I'm going to basically extend that. I've added a couple brands because there are some standout things that I definitely recommend. So what I'm going to do is leave a link to that spring 2019 recommendations video down below in my description box. I don't want to just repeat the things that I said in that video. So again, this is just going to be kind of an extension of that video, but I still do very much highly recommend everything that I mentioned in that video. So let's go ahead and start with Tom Ford. I love the newest quads that he came out with. Let me just show you. The first one was Body Heat. It's just gorgeous. And all three of these quads, I think I've talked about quite a bit. And I think this, did I mention this in my favorites? Because this I pulled out recently and I've been using it quite a bit. But this one and the other two that I'm going to mention all have that wet dry formula, and they're really, really beautiful. They're very high shine when you use them wet. And when you use them dry, you get this really, really nice like wash of shimmer. They're gorgeous. They're beautiful both ways. Like you don't have to use them wet to kind of get the effect that you want. You just end up with two different effects. So this is Body Heat, number 3. And here is number 4, Suspicion. This one is much warmer. It has a lot of like metallic tones in there, like copper and golds. And this one is, it's so pretty. So this one is Suspicion. And the last one here is Double Indemnity. And this is the one that I went hard with when I first got all of these. I don't know, I was just really loving this kind of smoky, cool toned quad. And then this shade is really beautiful. It has just the slightest bit of warmth in there. So it's not just this like metallic white, like there's a little something else going on in there. On my skin tone, it reads a little bit like a slight pink. So it's very, very pretty without being too harsh or too stark on the eyes. And then this shade has like little paillettes in there, which to me are a little bit different from glitter, at least how I interpret it. I feel like they look a little bit more like sheets in the eyeshadow, and I feel like that gives just a more interesting kind of effect to the eyes. So this one is Double Indemnity. And then the other new Tom Ford product I want to mention, but I actually lent it to a friend of mine. She's the same one I lent my Sunrise palette to, my Natasha Denona Sunrise palette to. Anyway, I wanted to lend that to her because she has a deeper skin tone than I do and kind of always has a difficult time kind of like finding highlights and blushes that really kind of like show up and make an impact on her skin tone. But anyway, that would be the Tom Ford, oh gosh, what are they called? Well, I'll put a picture of it up right here, but it's the Duo, and it's, I know the colorway is Incandescent. I think they're like the Skin Illuminating Powder Duo, something like that. Anyway, I love this. I mean, you have to be very, very careful with the bottom blush shade in there. I remember when I first used it, I totally walked right into clown territory. It is very, very bold. It's a very beautiful, like peachy pinky color, and it's a little bit more on the neutral side. I feel like with the other peachy pinky blush colors that I have in my collection, they always lean a little bit warm. They always have like a little bit of a terracotta hint to it. This particular shade I think leans a little bit more pink, so it's a little bit more neutral and less warm than other colors that I kind of find similar to it. It's just stunning, and it has the most beautiful sheen to it. The highlighter is gorgeous, is absolutely gorgeous. I think it looks good on like light medium to medium skin tones. I love the texture of these powders. They're like that baked gelée formula, and they just, you know, they're really buildable, but they can go on, if you use a light hand, they can go on in a very sheer way. I just think they're absolutely stunning. So I highly, highly recommend the Incandescent Duo. Okay, moving on to Natasha Denona. I just did my Natasha Denona ranked video, and this came in #1, but this is the green brown palette, and I think it's an awesome time to pick up this palette because of the sale, and this is not an inexpensive palette to say the least, but I love it, and I actually have it on my eyes today. So I put down this color kind of all over my lid, and then I use these two colors just to kind of add a little bit of dimension. I use some other eyeshadows that I'll talk about in a little bit, but I just love this palette. I love the formula, I love the color story, I love like every single shade in here I love. And that I think is like so difficult to find in a palette, especially one this large. But I wouldn't hesitate in putting any of the shades in here. I think they're all absolutely stunning. So I recommend this palette. I'm going to be doing a wish list video because I think this one's just going to end up being too long if I do both. But in my wish list video, I have the blue purple in there. Definitely colors I don't wear all the time, but I'm so smitten with this palette that I just really want that one. So anyway, the 28 green brown palette, definitely recommend. What I also recommend from Natasha Denona, and I also have that on my face today, is the tan palette. So this is the Bronze and Glow palette. This came out after her Blush and Glow palette. Bloom, that's what it was called. Bloom Blush and Glow palette. And so I didn't mention this in my spring recommendations video, but I love this. So I have this bronzer on pretty much all over. Where you would kind of contour, I have it all over my forehead. I swept it across my nose. I brought it down my neck. I try to warm up my chest a little bit, which is like really like lily white. So I love this for like an all over bronze. I do have to use a very light hand with this because I do think this whole palette is maybe better geared towards someone with like a more of a medium skin tone. But if you use a light hand, I think it works fine. I have a pretty light skin tone and I can make it work. And I've said this before about this palette, but I love all the different textures in here. This is a cream. This is like a cream to powder. This is like a pretty traditional kind of like pressed powder formula. This one is like a baked gelée formula. So I also have these two powders kind of all over, swept all over, used as highlight and everything. So I love how all the like different tones also kind of work together. I love all the different textures. So I love this palette, and I was really happy when I received it and it worked because I was really nervous that it was going to be too deep for my skin tone. But again, like I said, if you use a light hand, I think it can totally work. So I did want to mention that I purchased the Coral palette when I was in New York. And as much as I like the Sunrise palette, and I think if you're interested in it, I would definitely recommend it because I think the quality is lovely. And if those colors really speak to you, then I would definitely pick it up. And this palette I think is kind of like a 5-pan version of it. This isn't her mini, this is like her regular 5-pan size. And I've only used this palette once, and I only used these two colors and this one because I was at my friend's lake house and I didn't need this much fever in my eye look. So I can't really recommend this to you because I personally have not used it myself very much, but I did want to let you know that these 3 shades are great. And I think if you are interested in the Sunrise palette, but you just think maybe it's just too much palette for you, you want something a little bit more edited down, this I think would be a good option for you. And if you travel a lot, maybe, this would be a good option for you. But again, I haven't used these 2 shades, so I can't testify to its performance or anything. So again, I can't really recommend this to you. But I did pick this up, and if you guys are interested in a video, I feel like it's a little bit late now, but if you are interested in a video on this palette, let me know. I will do that for you. All right, next up, let's talk about Viseart. So these 2 edit palettes came out since the spring sale. So this is the Warm Edit, and this is the Rosé Edit. I love these little palettes. I love Viseart. Let's just start there. I love Viseart shadows. Their mattes are amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm definitely in the Viseart camp when it comes to mattes. I also really love their shimmers. So I have the darker chocolate brown color here, deepening up my outer corner. And then I used this shimmer and this shimmer from the Rosé Edit to kind of create a little bit of a shimmer gradient there from my inner lid, like over the mid part of my lid there. And I just love Viseart shadows, and I just love this line that they've come out with, these edit palettes and then their Petit Pro palettes, because those are basically 2 rows of it. So they're more like business card size. These pans are definitely small, but they're great. I never, ever really pan an eyeshadow. So I really love that they've like sized these down and they've put them in these like magnetized palettes. And I just love them. I love the packaging. I think they're really, really handy. I think they're like sturdier than they look. When you look at this flip out packaging, you may think that maybe it's a little bit flimsy, but this is like very like rock solid, and I don't have a problem, you know, mentally like traveling with these. They're just perfect travel companions. So I love these. All right, Charlotte Tilbury. So she's come out with the Hot Lips 2 collection since the spring sale. And I just wanted to mention that the kissing formula, so the Hot Lips 2 collection, I think there's like 10 or 12 colors. There's quite a few colors that she released, and some of them were matte and some of them were more of like a creamy satin, her kissing formula basically. And I love this cream satin formula that she's come out with. As far as I understand, it's supposed to be her kissing formula. I don't think that there's been any change to it or whatever, but for some reason I feel like they feel better. They feel better and they look better. So I love the JK Magic and the Dance Floor Princess. These two, surprisingly, I thought I was going to be wearing like Glowing Jen all the time, which is a little bit more of a deeper kind of neutral color. But this JK Magic color is like the perfect nude. And I really thought it was going to be too light. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of concealer lips, but it has just enough of like a peachy pigment in there that, oh, it's just gorgeous. And I don't have it on my lips today because I have something else that I wanted to mention in this video. But I just love JK Magic. And then here is Dance Floor Princess. This one I picked up after like my initial purchase because, like I said, I just love this formula. And I thought, what other colors are in this formula? And this was one. So this one is very similar. So Dance Floor Princess is very close to JK Magic. It's just a little bit... it's a little bit brighter. I don't want to say it's pinky or peachier because they actually have a very similar kind of tone there, but this one is just a little bit brighter. And this is great if I just want like a no makeup kind of like my lips but better. This has a little bit more of like a concealer lip kind of like look to it. This one is like I can kind of throw it on without any lip liner and go. So both of these colors have been like my surprise kind of like favorites out of this collection. And then I did have to mention the Glowgasm palette because this, I believe, yeah, this came out since the spring sale as well. And I love the Lovegasm. This is the one that's deeper. This is the one that really is not appropriate for my skin tone, technically, but I am like in love with these two powders here. This one's a little bit too gold for me. This one I have to kind of, I can definitely use, but kind of like the Natasha Denona, I just have to use like a lighter hand. But these two shades are so amazing. They're so, well, they're really beautiful. I just think they're so stunning. Like this color is just, it's so unique. It's really, really unique, at least for me. I don't have anything like this in my collection. This is absolutely gorgeous. And true to this Glowgasm name, if you want a lot of glow on your cheeks, these are the products for you. So that is the Charlotte Tilbury Lovegasm Glowgasm palette. Something worth mentioning again that I did mention in my spring sale is the Kogan Do Natural Lighting Loose Powder. I love this. I have this on my face today. It is definitely my go-to powder. It's just middle of the road, and I don't mean that in an average way. I just mean that, you know, it's not too light, it's not too heavy, it's not too flat matte, it's not radiant. Like it really is just like the perfect powder for all occasions, and I absolutely love it. But I'm not going to dwell too long on this because I did mention it in my spring sale, but I did want to mention it again because I just love it. I absolutely love it. All right, next up, let's talk about La Mer. I don't have much to mention. I just have two things. This one I'm actually surprised I didn't mention in my spring recommendations video because this product has been out a while, but this is their replenishing oil exfoliator. And this is like a physical exfoliant. I cannot use like acid exfoliants, the ones that basically kind of like just eat away at your dead skin. Hi, baby. I'm sorry. Did I wake you? Oh, I missed you so much on my trip. Would you come up on my shoulder? And then say hi to everyone. Say hi. Hi, everyone. Who's a cute girl? Did you miss mommy? Did you miss mommy when I was gone? Oh, you don't care. You're such a daddy's girl. You're such a daddy's girl. What do you want to do later? You want to go to the dog park later? You want to go to the dog park later? All right, sorry, back to La Mer. So I was talking about the replenishing oil exfoliator, and I can't use like acid exfoliators, so I do like physical exfoliants. And if you are the same as me, or if you just enjoy a physical exfoliant, I highly recommend this. So the texture is like pretty thick. It's definitely oil based. It's very, very oily feeling. And then you have the scrubby bits in there. And I love it. Any other kind of like physical exfoliator, I have to be a little bit careful with because I feel like it really kind of like dries out my skin a little bit. And I know some people don't like physical exfoliators at all. They think it's damaging to the skin. It's the only kind of exfoliator I can use. So I like the fact that it has this like really kind of like nourishing oil that's kind of like helping out your skin at the same time you're like physically exfoliating it. So I'm a big, big fan of that. And the granules in here are actually like on the bigger side, but as soon as you start working it into your skin, they break down. And if you feel like your skin maybe is even a little bit too sensitive for that, what I'll do is actually add a little bit of water to it. It breaks down the granules before you like put it on your skin. So I'm a big, big fan of this exfoliator. And the other thing I wanted to mention from La Mer is this hydrating illuminator. And I purchased this a while ago. I saw it pop up. I think it was like either Harrods or Selfridges. It was definitely a UK based site and it wasn't here in the US. So I've been using this kind of on the DL because it was sold out in the UK. It wasn't available here in the US, but it has finally started popping up here in the US. So I thought I would mention it. But what I like to do occasionally is add it to my foundation to give myself like a little bit more of a glow. And that's what I did today. And we'll talk about the foundation that I'm using in just a bit. But I like adding it to foundations that just have, you know, like a natural finish. There's no radiance to it or whatever. And I feel like my skin needs a little bit of radiance. And I did that today because I was just on an awful flight last night and my skin definitely needed a little bit of help. And I feel like it just makes my skin just look that much healthier. And I really love it. It has like a nice texture. It's not too thick. It's not too thin. It's not like watery feeling at all. And then the glow that it gives is really beautiful. It has like a little bit of like a pinky peach tinge to it, which is why I really like adding it to my foundation because I don't feel like it really kind of changes up the color of my foundation or anything. It's not like I put a lot into it anyway, but I like that it has kind of like a fleshy tone base to it. I don't know that I would use this kind of as an illuminating primer. I think it's a little bit too much for that, but I do like adding it to my foundation. But I think it's also very nice if you want kind of like a light like cream highlight to your face, you know, if you just want to kind of spot highlight with a cream, I think this is very good for that as well. All right, next up, let's talk about NARS. So NARS basically like revamped their lipstick line. And just to give you a little bit of background, and hopefully this isn't too boring, but I suffer from eczema. And when I got eczema for the first time, way back in high school, it basically affected my upper lip here. It was gross. Anyway, I had really, really bad eczema up here. That's where it kind of came out first. And, you know, every time I would kind of like calm it down or whatever, like by the time I got to college, you know, I was using like steroid creams to kind of like bring it down or whatever. Every time I used either MAC, NARS, there were actually a lot of lipsticks on the market that I couldn't use. It would just bring on my eczema like immediately. I would feel my skin start to get really thick. And so for the longest time, I've just stayed away from certain brands. I know formulas have changed. I know my skin is a lot stronger now. And anyway, it's taking me a long time to kind of get back into NARS lipsticks. So I thought with their kind of revamp of their whole line, I would take the opportunity and kind of like dive back into NARS lipsticks. So they kind of redid the packaging. So they're in these like squared off packages, which I think they're kind of doing with everything. They're compacts or whatever. They're all squaring them off. They don't have that like Pop-Tart look to them or like the soft corners to them on the lipstick. They feel, I have to say, they feel really, really kind of cheap. They feel really, really light. But they still have the same black matte kind of finish to them. So they have three finishes, a matte, a satin, and like a sheer. So you guys know that I love sheer lipsticks. So I got two of them while I was in New York, and I hauled these for you in my first live stream that I did from there. But I really, really enjoy them. So I got Cruising and Sexual Healing. And Sexual Healing is what I have on my lips today. It's frosty, as you can see, and I really like that, especially in a sheer lipstick. I feel like it just gives my lips like a little something. I'm giving my lips more of a finish versus like pigmentation or color. So I really like that. So that's Sexual Healing. And then Cruising is the one that I actually lip swatched for you on the live stream. Let me go ahead and just hand swatch that for you. So there is Cruising. Isn't that pretty? So I actually wore cruising quite a bit while I was in New York because it's easy to wear, it's sheer, it's really comfortable. As you can probably see in the swatch, it's very, very emollient. So it's very creamy on the lips. And Sexual Healing I only wore once in New York, and so this is the second time I'm wearing it. So far I'm loving these sheer lipsticks, and I'm thinking about maybe checking out the satin lipsticks and seeing if there are any colors in that line that I like. So those are the new NARS lipsticks that I'm really enjoying. All right, let's move on to Guerlain. So this foundation is what I have on my face today. I purchased this when I was in Toronto. So this foundation has been available all over the world for a very long time, and it is finally available in the US. I'm not exactly sure what the holdup was. I think it's probably the fact that it has SPF in there. In any case, it is finally available, and I absolutely love, love, love this foundation. It has a very, very natural, beautiful look to it. It has a very soft fragrance to it. There's like a sweet almond note in there, and it's very, very subtle. I love the texture of this foundation. It's a little bit creamy. It has SPF 20 in there. And if you go onto the Guerlain site, they have a whole description about this foundation, how this is basically their first foray into a foundation using more natural products. So there's no alcohol in here, which I really enjoy. And I appreciate that they're kind of going in this direction, or that they're expanding their line to kind of accommodate people who are more into clean beauty. And the packaging is so great too. I just think it's so much fun. It's a little bit off kilter, but it's a pump. It's glass. It's great. I did not bring this with me to New York because of the packaging, and I didn't feel like decanting any of it, and I really, really missed it. Oh, the shade I have is 02N if you're interested, and I think it's a great shade match. I don't feel like I have to do like that much like bringing of it down my neck or anything. So I love this foundation. Highly, highly recommend it. All right, the next Guerlain product I wanted to recommend, and I have definitely talked about this a lot in the past. I use this still an awful lot, and this has definitely made an appearance in my favorites. But this is the Terracotta Highlighting Stick, and I have it in the shade Nude. And it looks like a very typical, highlighter stick, but let me just swatch this for you. There is a lot of high shine in there. It is so gorgeous. This one really surprised me when I got it. I just was not expecting something this metallic and shiny, and it's just gorgeous. And if you're a fan of the Guerlain Terracotta scent, which is like their signature summer scent, you're gonna love this. It just smells like the beach to me. It's like a mixture of like the salt water and like coconut oil and suntan lotion. It's so amazing. I love it. So that is the highlighting stick. And then the other thing I wanted to mention from Guerlain is their Terracotta face palette. I love this middle powder for just a really natural all over bronze. If I just want to make myself look a little bit healthier, I will brush this just all over my face. So all of the products in here are just kind of like a pressed powder, and these are pressed, I want to say a little bit harder. So it's almost impossible to pick up like too much product and go a little bit too crazy with it, which I enjoy if I want to use a powder kind of all over my face, because I feel like it can go wrong very, very quickly. And I don't ever run into that problem with this one. This one is great if I want to do a little bit more, like add a little bit more contour, like around the perimeter of my face, under my cheekbones, kind of like carve out my jawline or whatever. But this one I just love all over the face. And then these two products are really lovely too. So again, they're powder products, so they're very straightforward. There's nothing, they're not like a baked gelée or whatever, so they aren't that complex, but they're really lovely, and they both have a nice amount of sheen to them. My only issue is that they made the pan like up and down when I really feel like they should have cut it across this way, because yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't make that much sense to me to have them up and down. So anyway, that is the Guerlain face palette. All right, and moving on to Hourglass. So I had to mention their new Unreal lip glosses. So I have 3. I have Ignite, which is probably the one I use the most. This is the one that I can just throw on if I want to give my lips like a little bit of a hint of color, not too much, and a little bit of like a shimmer. Halo I use a lot as well, but this one I use a little bit more as like a lip topper if I want to add a little bit of juiciness to a color. It does have like a little bit of a milky appearance, so it's also nice on its own, but I definitely think of it more as a topper than alone. And Solar is much more of like a metallic kind of like watermelony color. So this out of the three that I have is the boldest and the brightest. With just a little bit of lip liner, this is great all on its own. So I have been loving these lip glosses. They are amazing. Great texture. They have just a little bit of a mint, like mintiness to them, but I don't actually feel any like kind of plumping situation on my lips, which I'm not a fan of. Again, I think it's just flashback to my eczema days, so I don't like that feeling on my lips. But they do have like a minty like scent to them. They're not, you know, sticky. They're not too thick. They're not too thin. They're great. So these are awesome. And in fact, I brought these two colors to New York with me, and you can see I've been hitting that Ignite color pretty hard. And then from Laura Mercier, her blushes. These blushes, the Blush Color Infusion blush colors, are like out of this world. So these are two blushes that I brought to New York and did not regret it. So I have the colors Fresco and Peach. Fresco is more of a nude with some shimmer in there. And this is great if you're going for like just kind of like a bronzy, smoky, kind of like sultry, kind of like summer look. This is absolutely stunning. And then Peach, which I have kind of like on the apples of my cheeks here, is a really just bright, fresh peach color. It has a little bit of like a satin sheen to it, but there are no micro glitters in it the way Fresco does. But it still has that really beautiful, like very light satin sheen, so it doesn't look too dry on the skin. It's definitely not fully matte, but it's absolutely gorgeous. And there's something really interesting about these formulas because I've been using both of these a lot. But it's like you almost can't tell. There's something about these powders that are, they like seem very hard pressed in the pan. Any brushes I've used pick up the product really easily, but they're not very powdery. There's just something really, really interesting about the formula of these blushes, because if you pick these up, you will notice that they're very like hard. They're very, very like, they're not very soft. Like when you put your finger in there, it's like hard, but they're very, very pigmented at the same time and very, very easy to pick up by a brush. So I am like, I don't know, very pleasantly confused by this formula, but I love these blushes, and I definitely want to pick up more, which I think I may do during this sale. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out my spring recommendations video if you kind of want more of like a fuller list, because again, I didn't want to be too repetitive. But let me know what you guys are going to be picking up down below in the comment section. I cannot wait to hear, or if you have any questions about products that you know I have that Sephora carries that I didn't mention or whatever, let me know. I'd be happy to kind of weigh in, and definitely keep an eye out for my wish list video, which I will be posting very, very soon. So don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video.